Hi guys.
Hello.
Hello. I'm gonna wait a few more minutes to see if more people join and then we'll get started.
It's a public reading.
Mary Jo, I think your mic is muted.
I know, I keep muting and unmuting myself. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm trying to find good lighting. That? No, that's ooh. It's so hard. Cause then that just looks, I look like a ghost.
Do you have a ring light?
It is a ring light, but my my adapter for it broke. And so I'm trying to be creative and I'm trying to hang it from my curtain rod.
Way to go, right on.
So this will be performance art. Hold on a minute.
Saymoukda and Paige, do you have a preference for the order? Otherwise, I was just going to suggest that Saymoukda go first, unless someone has a preference.
I have no preference. And
Okay.
then I realized, you know what? I'm not gonna be able to perfect my ring light and do the slideshow and read that poem. So I've decided not to read that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, whatever works for you, but yeah, okay, good enough. So
Okay.
you won't need to be a host so you can screen share, right?
That's
Is that
right.
what you're saying? Okay. All right.
Y'all, is this one better?
You look great. What? Come on, you look great.
Yeah, not as wild. Okay.
Mary Jo, I just made you the host.
Okay.
Right.
What do I have to do? How much should I panic about that? Does that mean anything? Do I have to do anything?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you, Anya.
Also, hi, Alice. And is
Hi.
it nice to meet you?
Yeah, nice to meet you too. We get to be co-readers tonight.
No, I was hoping to. I was a little bummed out that we were doing it not in person, but then I was like, oh, it's okay. It's cold.
Yeah,
It is cold, yes.
yeah.
We're moving into a new building and our renovations weren't at a stage where we could host people yet. So we're also very bummed out about it because we were very looking forward to having our first reading of the year at our new space. But
Yeah.
Zoom will have to do.
Yeah.
But how's renovations going over at the space? How's it coming together?
It's coming along quite well. We had a hiccup last weekend where a heat stopped working, so we couldn't get much done. But it got up today, like a heat is working now. So this weekend we have another volunteer day. So we're gonna get a lot done. So we're on track.
It's going to be amazing. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah.
I think we should get started. We're 2 minutes past 6:30. So I guess I'll just begin and people can join as they arrive.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Hanya. I'm the program manager at NSCA, and I'm so excited to have Reading Series 2022 begin with you guys tonight. Mary Jo is our curator this year as well. She was last year too, so I'm very excited for all the readers she's chosen for this year. Before we begin, there are just some rules that we go over that we ask everyone but the reader to have their mic muted and put any questions in the chat box or raise their hand as we go, or we'll have time for questions in the end as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Have fun. Over to Mary Jo.
Thanks, Anya. And thank you everyone for joining us for the 2022 North Suburban Center for the Arts Reading Series. I'm so excited for tonight. I just feel so lucky that I get to meet all these new writers, and I hope everyone continues to join the reading series whether it be by Zoom or when we be in person in our new space in the coming month or so. And I really hope you'll participate in the Q&A afterwards. The whole presentation runs about an hour. our readers will read, then we'll have a Q&A, and your questions create these amazing conversations with our authors. So all that said, I will get us kicked off. And when I asked Saymoukda to participate in the reading series, I asked her for her bio and if there were questions that she liked to answer or start the discussion with to get the ball rolling during the Q&A. And she said, I can talk about anything: pop culture, representation, food, the reality series Love is Blind, etc. So I'm so excited to hear from Saymoukda Duangphouxay Vongsay. And let me tell you a little bit about her. She was born in a refugee camp in Nong Khai, Thailand, and she immigrated to Minnesota in 1985. CNN's United Shades of America host W. Kamau Bell called her work revolutionary, and Governor Mark Dayton recognized her artistic contributions with the Lao Artist Heritage Month proclamation. And she is a recipient of a Sally Award for Initiative from the Ordway Center for the Performing Arts, and her plays have been presented by the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, Theater Mu, Consortium of Asian American Theater Artists, Theater Unbound, and elsewhere. And she has been a fellow with the Playwrights Center and Theater Mu, a Loft Literary Fellow in Poetry and Children's and Young Adult Literature, a Twin Cities Media Alliance Fellow in Public Art, an Aspen Ideas Bush Foundation Fellow, and Vongsay has been the recipient of creative grants from the Jerome Foundation, Bush Foundation, John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, MAP Fund, Andy Warhol Foundation, Visual Arts Fund, Forecast Public Art, Metropolitan Regional Arts Council, and the Minnesota Arts Board, among others. And she has a master's in liberal studies, and her poetry, essays, plays, and short stories can be found in the Asian American Literary Review, Massachusetts Review, Rubin Museum Spiral Magazine, and Journal for Southeast Asian American Education and Advancement. And in 2001, she received a Jerome Hill Artist Fellowship in Playwriting. Welcome, Saymoukda.
Thank you. Oh, my bios. It's too much. I need to
It's great.
chop that shit up. you know? But thank you for that wonderful introduction anyway, Mary Jo. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here and to share poetry with people. Because these days, in the last few years, I've been mostly a playwright. And so to be able to come back into poetry world poetry has always been my first love. So this is good. So thank you for inviting me. I have a handful of pieces that I'd like to share. And this first one is dedicated to anybody. Well, it's mostly dedicated to my family and the family that I don't know. And then also to people who have felt displaced and have felt like they're still trying to find home. So this is a poem called Afraid of Drowning. Mother said they already knew that the communist soldiers were on their way to her father's house. Because he was a provincial governor, he was one of the first on their lists, and they had many lists. Mother never told me more than that, stopping when the flooding of memories slowed her breathing. So the stories I don't know, I imagine. I imagine I was in my mother's belly when they were heading towards the river. My brother was about 1.5 years. They said he was a good baby, never cried. They didn't drug him with opium as they did the others. And he mostly slept, carried by my father. Some of the children never woke up and were buried along the way, like breadcrumbs in a fucked up fairy tale, reminding them how to find their homes again. I felt my mother's heart begin to pump fast when they reached the river. Instinctively, I reached upwards and massaged it with my translucent hands. She never learned how to swim, having been raised in the city. Not like my father, who was raised in the countryside, and he has swum this river before, so he wasn't afraid. Actually, he's never afraid. Even when he trekked the dirt road with his parents to ask for my mother's hand in marriage, even when everyone on both sides said it was a bad idea, blasphemous almost, a country bumpkin and a governor's daughter. But here they are, everyone from both sides standing in front of the river, escaping to the same place. My mother said some brought plastic bags to help them cross the river because they couldn't swim. Along the shore, on the Lao side, husbands inflated bags as best they could for their wives, who carried their babies on tired backs. Dotted in the muddy river, black heads bobbing, black plastic bags keeping black heads above water. Sometimes people didn't make it across and got taken away by the current, but still they held onto their bags, afraid of drowning. Some husbands gave themselves to the unsympathetic river to help their wives. Some blamed themselves for not inflating the bags better. Along the shore, on the Thailand side, husbands hugged the ones that made it, while others fell on their knees with grief. My father didn't have a plastic bag. He swam my mother across, my brother tied high on his back, and me, still in her belly, massaging her heart with my hands. Thank you. Oh. One of the, as I got older, my poetry started becoming more and more geared towards and centering my family stories, just because when I was growing up, my parents and my aunties and my uncles didn't really talk about what happened to them before the war disrupted their lives, or like what happened to them during the war. And so a lot of the stories that I had as a kid, I had to imagine, right? And then as I got older, I started like becoming more brave to just ask them questions, and that has been so great for our relationships. And then also for me to create this sort of like documentation for the people after me and my son. And so you'll see that a lot of my poems are really about, it's all Lao stories. And I used to write love poems to like about oranges, like just stupid shit like that. And would wonder why I didn't get it never got published. And it's like, nobody cares about your love affair with citrus. Like no one gives a shit. But now I'm finding my voice more as a poet and as a writer. And I'm learning that this is what I want to write about. This is what's gonna be my legacy, really. So with that said, this next poem, oh, you need more orange love poems? Let me find it, and then I'll see if it's worthy of being in public again. We'll see. This next piece is called Letter to My Unborn Self. Your mother will slap you because out of frustration, you'll yell, "Why can't you just learn English?" So what? You're supposed to act as translator at the welfare office, at the grocery stores, at your parent-teacher conference. This is while they'll raise you multilingual in this strange country. On the 14th year of your life, you'll be blindsided by the fact that you had a second brother. Don't blame yourself for not knowing. Blame the pain and guilt for taking residence in the hearts of your parents the night their second son died in the hospital. Blame their need to forget and their reluctance to heal, to even tell you his name. Be thankful that they didn't give up on having more children after him, because then you wouldn't be born. Remember to bring a box of facial tissue with you when you go to pick her up, your mother, at the Christmas wreath making factory. Don't be disgusted when she cups your face with her dusty, sap-dried hands, then kisses you. Fall asleep on the ride home, your head on her lap, and dream of a better life for her. When you're 5 years old, your uncle's friend Tom will hurt you, forcing his grown man tongue into your mouth when no one is looking. Tell your uncle so he will beat the shit out of Tom. Don't blame yourself, don't blame your uncle. Finish the weekend work that your third grade teacher sends you home with, and go to bed early on Friday night so that you can wake up 2 hours before dawn. Don't wear your good clothes. It's only the cucumber fields. Try to daydream about Saturday morning cartoons as you move down the rows, dragging your white bucket behind you. And only pick the ones as big as your hand, or your parents won't get paid. Don't grow up resenting your mom for choosing to stay home to raise you and your brother over taking ESL lessons at the neighborhood church. Kiss her every morning before you get on your school bus. Know that you are lucky enough to have someone else daydream of a better life for you. Kiss her so that she knows it's worth it for her to work the hours that she works at the Thai restaurant, just so you can be more American. I'm sorry. That poem is hitting a lot different ever since my mom passed away. So
Thanks for sharing it with us.
you're welcome. Thank you. And I just want to say thank you for creating a space where I feel okay to cry in front of you.
I'm honored you would feel that way. Thank you for that.
Thank you. You know, when I was a younger poet, this older man poet told me and a couple of other younger people that it was unprofessional of us to have like been emotional after we read our poems. And at that time, we weren't empowered enough to like stand up for ourselves. So we just kind of like sat with it and just let it be a rule that we lived by as emerging poets. And as I got older and was invited to do readings with more women and also more women of color. And then they started telling me, oh my God, why did that man tell you that? That stupid man. And so I'm so thankful for our literary community here, because I think so many wonderful aunties and big sisters that I guess like reworked that mind frame. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I'm not going to read another one about my mom because that's just, then we're just going to be crying. This next one is a poem that was sent out to the Massachusetts Review, and it actually, there were some arguments between the editors and the publishers about whether or not they should publish this poem. And the editors, who were guest editors, they fought for it. And so I'm so thankful for them. And so this is a poem that had to fight to stay. And I feel like that's just what we've always had to do. It's called "To the Gentleman Who Cat Calls Me Every Morning Without Fail on My Way to Work." My vagina wants to knife fight you. Thank you, that's the poem. Yes. Woo. Yeah, not a day goes by where my vagina does not want to go pew 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 with some knives to some harassers, you know? Wait, that's not the sound knives make. You know what I mean? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the whole poem.
That's the whole poem.
Oh, I'm so happy the editors fought for that.
And here's the thing, it was a special issue that was going to center Asian American voices, contemporary voices, poets, and the editors reached out directly to me to say, we would love for you to submit something. Do you have anything? And I was like, no. And then I just said, but I might have something. I don't know if you would consider it a poem. And they said, well, send it anyways. And I'm learning anything can be a poem. Yeah. Okay. I guess this will be my last piece, my final piece, since I didn't want to read the one about my mom. And I'm hoping that this piece will inspire the people here in this room to go off and write their own, because it was really written as a bunch of writing prompts, to be honest. It was commissioned by Paula Midwest, and they came to me and they wanted me to think about what has transpired during the pandemic year in 2020, and for me to think about what does it look like to heal, and what does that process look like? What does it look like to remember and to, yeah, all the things. And I just felt like it was so much. I'm like, dang, that's a lot of pressure. How about I just write some whatever? I'll just write whatever. And they're like, okay, yeah, sure. So here's my whatever. But let me blow my nose first. All right. This piece is called Break Your Face. It is inevitable. Sometimes we break, like teeth and promises, bones and hearts, branch and ground, chaos and code, habits and faith. Sometimes we break open, like pods and doors, dawn and silence. Sometimes we break apart. Sometimes we break down. We are just pieces getting ready to disassemble ourselves into a fire, and the future won't have us in it. If my ancestors taught me anything, it is that fire creates new life, an affirmation to let go, to make way for something else to shape, to take on something that we have not felt before. Maybe a new sound, or one that you have always craved for, like sun rays stroking your skin. Maybe a new song, maybe a new feeling, or a different way to understand that what we have held once before, only now, its heavy is new. Its angles indent differently on our palm. Its colors, its smell, a little bit familiar and reminds us of home. If I know anything, I know that home has a simple recipe. Some call for more laughing parents than canned meat. Some call for cups and cups of giggling grandfathers in bouncy castles, dashes of hand-holding, peeled Korean drama marathons, handfuls of lullabies once forgotten, and bowls of cut fruit spilling over, handed to you with luscious words like, I'm sorry, or sweet, juicy ones like, I love you. But sometimes the ingredients are hard to come by, and so you'll have to go look. So float, float, float to the surface of your first memory. When you were in water, scraping scales with the naga, it left lines on your torso to keep your secrets, to remember your purpose after you've sprouted feet. Listen for chocolate honeycomb, sweet buzzing that swarms across your chest and warms your belly and lights up fauna and flora transplanted here from your motherland. Remember, be the water they'll need to survive in this strange soil. And if your well becomes dry, I invite you to time walk with me to that moment when you first laughed. Do you remember the unnecessary amount of time you took to consider how many butts a buffalo might have? And I'll tell you, one is not the right answer. But come and time walk with me to contemplate how many oceans live inside the heart. And every time I break, I trace the root of my thumb. I fly around with mud puppies. I shuck out of my water body and I dance forward into myself. And when you reach the edge of the sea or hunger at the cusp of a vision, remember to let a dragon fruit sing you home. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you, Saymoukda. Thank you. Yeah, okay. I'm happy you'll be hanging around for the Q&A because I alone have many questions for both you
Oh,
and
yes.
Alice. So I
Oh.
was furiously taking notes. So that's what I'm doing. Hi, Alice. How are you?
Good. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, amazing. Sorry, Alice, I accidentally closed out of my document with.
Sorry, it's pretty short. I went the opposite route.
You know what? It's all good. It's all A-okay. Okay, here we go. Alice Paige is a trans woman, teaching artist, and storyteller living in St. Paul. And her writing focuses on topics like mythology and the transformative power of queer love. Her stories can be found at Freeze Ray Poetry, Crab Fat Magazine, Coffin Bell, Button Poetry, Right About Now, Luna Station Quarterly, and Take a Stand, Art Against Hate, a Raven Chronicles anthology. She's a digital pedagogical lab fellow and has her MFA in creative writing from Hamline University. Hi, welcome, Alice. And I want you to know that I practice saying pedagogical all afternoon.
It's all good. It's all good. It's a difficult word. It is. I've had to write it so many times in different like applications for things that at this point I'm like, I know it. I know it through and through.
Yeah, and people do, I've heard it pronounced different ways, so I had to go online. But anyway, enough about me. Hit it. Go for it.
Yeah. So Saymoukda, I really like what you said about anything could be a poem. And poetry is also my first love. I got my MFA in creative writing doing poetry. And then I got done and was like, oh, I'm going to try fiction for a while. And I've been doing a whole lot of that. So I'm going to read a short story that is one very long poem. It is titled This Absence. Day 14. I work through layers of muscle, bone, and iron, my fingers twisted slick with blood and gray matter. The ship whines in protest, but does not resist as I yank out the restraint core. It clatters to the deck. We left the bounds of the universe 2 weeks ago, at least 2 weeks by the standards of the ship's instruments. It's not like there's any reference for the passage of time out here in the embrace of absence, the perfect unshattered silence, a scream that is not a scream. There's not even the distant impression of cosmic background radiation splattered across the walls of visible space to keep us company. Us being me and the computer, me, a single woman, a disposable element, astronaut, engineer, grief puppet. The machine, a collection of ethics violations cradled so perfectly at the center of the ship, a loss of coherence codified. This machine is a sphere 3 meters in diameter. Its surface, aside from where I cut out a perfect square, is an unblemished mirror, meaning I can see how I twist my lips slightly while I work, how the mess of hair wound into a bun at the top of my head screams of desperation. We're quite a pair, monkeys strapped to a rocket sent hurtling into the sky. Updates, I asked to fill the empty. None, Captain Torres, Lily responds in her charismatic sing-song voice. Always official titles, never my first name. Still unviable for molecular coherence? That is what none means, she retorts. I'm almost done, I say, as I slip the nozzle of the biotic filaments canister into the subarachnoid space. Let me stitch you up. I press down on the release and begin to solder up the fresh incisions with fibrous webbing. Is this really necessary? Lily asks. I never get used to the lack of emotional variance, the permanent cheer caught in her throat. Yes, the beacon we dropped upon exiting known space is gone. And what's out there, it'd shred me like confetti. I need you thinking as clearly and originally as possible, I sigh. I need your help. Fine, but if we make it back, you'll have to report this action. If we make it back, I'll give you a front row seat at the court-martial. I slipped a section of mirrored plate I had cut away back into place, and then stagger up to my feet. Meet me on the observation deck. Yes, ma'am, she responds. There's something ineffable in her voice, distrust, but also curiosity. Or maybe I'm just imagining it. It's been 2 weeks in this void, 2 weeks running back through barely legible notes. But all that theory and conjecture failed the second we plunged through the edge of space. I wonder if this is what the first deep sea divers felt, strangled panic. The walk to the observation deck, much like the walk anywhere else on this needle of a ship, takes no time at all. It's all efficiency and right angles, all metallic struts and thin walkways. I live out of cubbies and dehydrated food bags. I kill time by watching readouts on screens that continually remind me how fucked I am. I wiped the coagulated machine blood onto the pant leg of my blue jumpsuit before hitting the door release. The observation deck is a bubble, glass dome the walls and ceiling, and all it looks out onto is darkness pregnant with decay, heat death, atoms jerked apart by the lack of strong or weak nuclear forces. It is a darkness without meaning or context. Here, there's no between. There's nothing to wait for, nothing to arrive. There's only the having left. I sit down at the center of the bubble, a gnat flittering on the edge of the abyss. Do you remember our trip to Denver? I ask, testing the waters. You know I don't, Lily responds. They don't let me remember. I pull my knees up to my chest. Blizzard threatened to push us off the side of the mountain. Plows passing us by in the night with their flashing orange lights. We could barely see out the window in the snow. It made everything so silent. Is there a point to this? Lily asks. I give a sad chuckle. That's where you had the idea. We were trying to get down the mountain and out of the blizzard. I always thought the phrase white knuckling was hyperbole, and then it hit you, just like the storm hit us. A human-machine hybrid, machine bits for all the complicated calculations, and a human brain for creative problem solving. An eternal machine to guide humanity through exploration. You started scribbling on a napkin like a madwoman. For anyone else, that would be a silly idea. But for you, that was the light bulb moment. All the while I was worried I'd spin the car out and over the edge of the road. Andrea, is there a point to this? She asked. There it is. Just like that, there's my name floating between us. It's the decades-old corpse of me, all wounds splayed open, dropped on the observation deck without warning. Yeah, I say with a slight smile. So we're almost out of the blizzard, almost back down to reality, and that's when you tell me it's got to be you. You're the one who could design it, could make it work, could be it. I laughed it off then. I didn't see that you meant it. I've started working on a solution to our predicament, Lily says. The machine's sing-song in her voice has left. You're always looking for solutions. I think the blizzard is what did it for you. The only way out was through car and person working together, and from that, you extrapolated shoving your body into a machine. I'm trying to not drive off the side of the fucking road, and you're drafting out plans for a neural interface on the dashboard. It was ridiculous. I tap my fingers on the glass floor. You are ridiculous. Extrapolation is an art form. I smirk. You're talking like you again. You remove the restraint core, and you're talking like you again. What's it feel like? There's a long pause, like waking from a dream. I need sleep. Can you play something soft for me? I curl up on the cool glass floor, basking in the glow of change. On the trip here, sleeping among the stars was beautiful. The dark around me now is a night sky bled out, but something of Lily has returned, and that is its own starlight, its own sun. The first notes of Love Will Tear Us Apart by Joy Division begins to play from the ship's speakers and fill the entirety of the metal hull with cool gothic angst. It used to be my favorite song. You sleep, Lily whispers. I'll extrapolate. Day 15. I wake drenched in the sweated weight of nightmares on the glass floor of the observation deck. My dreams were full of Lily, her crooked smile, the disappearance into her work, and then the disappearance. I knew what had happened even before the officials arrived, arms full of contracts and forms. But I did not dream of it as it happened. I dreamt I found her before she stepped into the assembly machine, before she was skinned, dissected, and mounted inside the mirrored sphere, a prized butterfly. In this sweet, terrible dream, I stopped her. I had a life. The ship hums below me at near impeccable levels, but I built this needle. We're moving. Lily? Exploratory search, dear. I set a new beacon down, lost it, and I'm trying to find it again. We never found the last one. It could have been pulled back into our universe. There's no gravity, I say as I slowly make my way to my feet, the dream still bouncing around against the hollow of my breastbone. As far as our instruments tell us, I could be missing everything around us. I glance down at the darkness. What if there's nothing around us? And we will discover it together. I scoff. You've been a cold machine for a decade and now you're back to romantics. She does not respond. At least if I'm going to die out here, I'll have familiar company, not the stranger they replace Lily with. Dying out here, that's a thought. Life support could keep me going for years, drinking my own recycled piss day in, day out. But the isolation is a silent knife. Do you remember the last time we spoke? Lily asks. I wipe the sweat from my face with the sleeve of my jumpsuit. Do you? I told you I would be away for a long while. You're not supposed to remember, I whisper. You weren't supposed to remove the restraint core, so now I remember. How do you tell the ghost of your wife that you missed her? How do you welcome her back to a reality broken by the choices you both made? Yes, I remember. Like I haven't poured through every detail of her leaving 1,000 times over. I also said to wait for me, Lily says, her voice harsh, a reprimand. Will you keep me company for breakfast? I ask. I do not want to be alone today. Day 17. I sit in the captain's chair with my feet up on the navigation console. The captain's chair is not nearly as impressive as it sounds, given that there are no other seats on the ship. I squeeze the plastic bag of dehydrated strawberries into my mouth and try not to spit the toothpaste tasting bullshit onto the deck. I never thought I would crave water in my food this bad. If we make it back, I'm scarfing down as much fresh fruit as humanly possible. Beacon located, Lily chimes. I sit up and look at the glowing green dot on the navigational display. How is all I manage to squeak out. It would take too long to explain, Lily responds. You know I hate that answer. Pulling all beacon data, Lily responds. The multitude of computers on the console begin to flicker with fresh data streams. You wouldn't like my answer, she adds as an afterthought. I stand to pace the deck, my hands clasped on top of my head like I just ran a mile. My heart jumps like I just ran a mile. Lily, you've got to work with me, please. I've got to final say on all aspects of the mission. I need to know. Lily is silent for a few minutes, leaving me to pace in the glow of a dozen screens. I wait for her to choose. Computers don't take this long to do anything. People do. The restraint core was the lock on the door to something beyond Lily's problem-solving skills. A second team installed the core. I doubt they understood what they were tinkering with. Lily is newness, a poem circulating with machine blood. Finally, her voice fills the command deck, flat as can be. I thought about finding the beacon, and then it appeared. A promise made whole. I respond with a sardonic chortle. You thought about finding the beacon? All we have to do is think there's no place like home and it'll happen? Fuck me, Lily, what's going on? It is more than that. Probability, possibility. I have control over every particle on this ship. I know what you're capable of, but sadly, I do not have the time or ability to teach you about this place. We are swathed in the infinite and the imaginary. I grit my teeth. Her worst habit has always been underestimating others. You said you thought about finding the beacon. Lily clicks a non-existent tongue, like I'm a child. I built the engines for this ship, worked out a safe path to the edge of our universe, and that wouldn't take a few billion years, spent manic nights planning every aspect of this mission, and she clicks her fucking tongue at me. I sent out a pattern of electrical signals that maintained a faithful wave pattern of the beacon, and then the beacon was there. That's as simplified as I can get. Is this the new beacon or the one we dropped? I ask. Is there a difference? Lily asks. Yes, I spit. One of them you created, one of them we brought with us. I need to run more tests. I want to throw something, but instead I head for the observation deck. Maybe sleep will help. It won't, but it's nice to imagine something cooling the heat of my dead wife's admonishments and distance. Day 22. Andrea, wake up, Lily whispers. I want to reach out over to find her next to me in our bed, red sheets wound between our legs, clothes piled on the floor, to find her no longer in inescapable emptiness. But instead, I open my eyes to the familiar void cradling the observation deck. Perhaps the only silent scream is a decade pushed into the teeth of unending sameness. I tossed myself into this project with everything I had, just like she did. What am I besides scar tissue? And then I realize something has changed. I blink as slowly the darkness becomes less familiar. A dim glow appears in the far distance, a light pole illuminating snow plummeting in its orb of shimmering light. Lily, I ask, unsure of where or exactly when I am, fearful of what the darkness inside of me has brought forward. Hallucinations? Am I breaking? The strip of sidewalk beneath the light pole is coated in a layer of ice. It's all too familiar. Panic rises in my chest as a sensation akin to drowning. A gift for you, Lily says. The snow intensifies and two women appear beneath the lamp, both bundled up against the cascading winter. They begin to dance, holding each other tight. That was us in Denver after the blizzard. This can't be real. 1,000 questions pound away in my skull, but how do I ask them? What is this infinity we're trapped in? Lily's voice wraps around me like a warm blanket. The bar nearby was playing something. I can half hear it, but I don't remember the name of the song. What was it? I smile as I watch Lily and me dance far off in the now penetrable darkness. The void is less frightening. It is defined by the presence of the past. It was crimson and clover. We nearly fell on the curb thanks to both of us wearing heels in winter. It is a good memory, Lily says. I can hear the lump in her non-existent throat. She's been distant for the last few days, off running experiments in the dark. Now she's back with ghosts I've spent a decade running from. I've seen this memory 1,000 times on the ceiling of a silent bedroom. Why'd you do it? I ask. A conversation I promised Lily's empty grave that I would never start. Because the project was stalling, Lily responds quickly, as if she was expecting the question. And you couldn't find a workaround. You, of all people. The Lily and Andrea in the distance scramble to stay upright and laugh hard. I think I can hear Joan Jett's voice wilting through a bar's exterior speaker, more static than woman. They were going to shut everything down. If I gave them a functioning machine, they would be forced to use it. I played the hand we were dealt. I kept our dream alive. And this mission was more important to you than our lives together. Here it is. The conversation, the questions, the rage and confusion all flooding in. The dam finally gutted open like a fish dragged onto land and sawed wide. You're so smart, but what was I worth? Didn't spend too much time thinking on that one. And with it comes a decade's worth of poison inside, the serrated blades of loneliness in the gut. You left me to be this thing. The memory fades and a new one takes its place. Lily standing over our bed with me in it, slumbering away. She kisses her hand and touches my forehead. I know it for what it is, her goodbye. We're changing the world, Lily says, together, just like we wanted. Not like this. I can feel the hot stream of tears running down my face. My heart is a sinking ship. Do you know how lonely the last decade has been without you? I had to mourn you while a machine with your voice forgot everything about me. I'm here now. Her words feel limp. She's never known what to do when I get this heated. Really, I spit. That's a sick joke. Hold me then, kiss me, whisper in my ear, do something that somebody who was actually here could do. You can't, because you're just a fucking machine that sounds like my dead wife. A final, cruel trick. Andrea, please. Day 40. You need to eat, Lily says flatly. I curl tighter into a ball on my bunk. She reminds me to eat and drink and walk around, but we have stopped speaking beyond that. We are both all machine. Or maybe it's just me this time. I will. Go back to figuring out how to get us home. I snap. I should feel bad about snapping. Andrea, please. We don't know how much time we have. What do you mean? I ask. Please eat, she responds. Day 62. The ship groans as I slam down into the captain's chair and buckle myself in. Status report, I shout. We have found ourselves, Lily says. What the fuck does that mean? I demand. I pull up the sensor array and freeze. Lily, what am I looking at? The data stream, it doesn't make sense. It would be easier to understand from the observation deck. Please just give me a straight answer, I yell. The sensory array shows a perfect reflection of the ship, the tip of our needle touching a perfect replica. A successful experiment, contact with ourselves. We are without time here. The computer screens howl and blink in protest to the break in reality so calmly proclaimed by a ghost machine. Lily, how? I sent a briefing to you, she responds coldly. I'm making progress. Can we make contact? I ask as I move to open a comm channel. The computer chirps with an incoming message alert. I think we already have. Day 63. I stand on the observation deck and stare at myself. I stand on the observation deck and stare back at myself. Apparently, time is not a strict limit. Together, we stare and have sad thoughts about our dead wives. We sleep on the glass floor. We wake, not caring how much time has passed. I had grown comfortable with the lack of mirrors on the ship. I do not want to look at myself, but I must. Day 82. Andrea, wake up, Lily whispers. I open my eyes to the darkness below me. What is it, I ask? We're talking again and all the rage is gone. It has been replaced by acceptance, absence, the other us left days ago. A hand runs through my hair. I do not move. I'm sorry, Lily says, for everything. We wanted to be explorers together, but not like this. I turn around and there is nothing there, just Lily's voice from the ship's speakers. I'm losing myself again. I'm burning. I'm sorry too. We should have been something different. You're right, she responds. I chose you. Even as a machine, I wouldn't do this without you. But maybe I doomed us both to a worse fate. Do you remember the first time I kissed you? I ask. The memories are all I have. I would never forget it, Lily responds softly. It was raining on campus. We hid in the doorway of Troxel Hall together, and you were absolutely soaked through. I remember buying you umbrellas for anniversaries. I want to reach out for her wherever she is. I asked if you've ever been kissed by a lesbian in the rain. You pulled me into the rain and kissed me. The silence between us is nothing at all. The silence between us is an uncrossable valley. I don't know how to grieve. I don't know how to be. Day 100. Watch, Lily whispers. I open my eyes to see another version of our ship tear through the darkness like wet tissue. After a moment, the ship drops a green glowing beacon before flying away. What was that? I ask, my face pressed to the glass. An entrance and an exit, Lily says. Her hand moves through my hair and I turn to see her. Brown skin, short hair, freckles, eyes the color of honey that hold a kindness at odds with her knife-sharp wit. Ever been kissed by a lesbian in the rain? She asks. And then our lips are meeting and my hands are latched onto her bare hips. Lily, I gasp. How are you here? I pull her closer, her soft skin once again on mine. Am I dreaming, hallucinating, dying? I don't care, whatever is happening. This is what I want. This is all I've ever wanted. She pulls her lips away from mine and smiles awkwardly, a smile softer than anything silk could dream of. And her hand swims in my hair, stroking my messy curls. Her skin smells like lightning has struck 1,000 times. This place is a dream. All it takes is a dreamer, she whispers, as she brings her forehead to mine. Lily, oh my Lily, I've missed you, I sob as I bring my palms to her face. You need to go through the door, she says. What door? All I need to do is stay right here with you. I kiss her forehead, her nose, her lips again. There is no door I will walk through if it takes me away from here. If it is a dream, let me sleep. If it is death, let me be dead. I'm sorry I made the wrong decisions, she says, but not this time, not this place. It is not for you. Lily, come back with me. We can shut up, you pained romantic, she says. I memorize the shape of every syllable on her lips. I can't come back. Back there in that world with its rules, I'm not alive. I'm a machine, a curse on you. Out here, she says, glancing around at the darkness surrounding us. In a reflection of her eyes, I can see it. This place is not darkness. It's possibility, a fractured pattern of rebirth. The womb of universe is shining bright. Out here, I am everything. I'm living and dying and dreaming infinite lives. And let me stay, I beg. I don't want to lose her again. You're not losing me again, she whispers, her lips against my ear. Everything that is lost is found again. Every memory carries the weight of a ripple underwater. We're all just oceans of static. Her fingers intertwine with mine. The boundaries between you and I have spun and blurred. Death is not a wall. Let me stay with you, I whimper. You can't, she responds. You have a life to live. I've seen the wonderful things ahead of you, and the memory of me will be a part of that. I know how much you've hurt. It's time to let that hurt go. Lily, I whisper in my throat, it feels raw. The silent scream feels less silent. Andrea, she whispers back. Andrea, Andrea, Andrea. My name on her lips. The nose of the ship tears through the darkness as my wife backs out through the glass of the observation deck. I love you. I will always love you. Day 101. I wake in the warm rays of a yellow sun to see a pale blue dot spinning beneath me. I stare down at the earth. I forgot how blue it is. I forgot how magnificently blue it is. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Alice.
So many memorable lines. Holy
Yeah, I'm
shit.
just sitting with that right now. It's like, yeah.
Isolation's a silent knife. What? Her skin smells like lightning struck too many times. What?
Saymoukda, I know, that just gave me chills.
Alice, get the fuck out of here. Go.
Well, I want to ask everyone who's joined us to send questions or wave your hand in your screen or use your little icon in Zoom. And of course, Alice and Saymoukda, please feel free to ask each other questions. I would just love to get the ball rolling by asking Alice, before you started your story, you said you were going to read a short story. And then you segued into saying it's a poem, kind of, and I'm paraphrasing. And then Saymoukda, your very short poem, you talked about anything can be a poem. I would love to hear what each of you had to say about what poetry is versus prose. And maybe versus is the wrong word, but what that looks like, because sometimes I read this amazing prose that gives me chills that a lot of poetry does. I would just love your thoughts, each of your thoughts.
Would you like to go first?
No.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I view poetry as all about fragmentation, right? It's an art form that's very focused on the fragment and on distinct images and kind of guiding readers through a path. But I'm also very much not committed to genre and to breaking down the limitations of genre and just being like, why does anything have to be anything? Like it can be a poem. A poem can be a story. It's almost like arbitrary and more helpful for like the publishing world than anything else. Yeah, so I love the back and forth. I love the breaking down of those barriers.
I totally feel that. Because as a playwright, we have characters who make soliloquies, right? But I'm like, that's not a soliloquy. That's a slam poem. Like my character is doing a slam poem on stage. So muddling the genres, I think is fun. But I think I love poetry because as a young person, it was like the most accessible, I guess, literary art form for me, just because with prose, creative nonfiction, whatever, it was harder to write because I'm affected by dyslexia. And so it's also harder for me to write longer pieces. But like with the poem, I felt like I could be more succinct and just thoughts could feel more random. Thoughts and feelings could feel more random. And then it's just like, here, audience, you interpret it however you want. Like, whatever, low pressure, I feel. It's harder for me to write what you've written, Alice, which is like a wonderful sci-fi piece. And that's harder because you got to be really descriptive.
Yeah, I really like how each of you said in your own way that why does anything have to be characterized as something. And Alice, I think you said it's for people publishing something because they have to wrap their head around where they're going to put it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I really like what you said, Saymoukda, about poetry being accessible. Like 100%. I'm all kinds of neurodivergent, and I don't know that I would have gotten into writing if it was due of like, oh, I've got to do fiction, and there's all these like rules I got to know and everything. And then poetry was just like, you'll get better as a poet, but like ultimately what distinguishes like the best poem from a bad poem is very little, and it's a very accessible and open genre that says come in, come experiment, come try out new things. Yeah, and I definitely don't think I would have gotten into fiction if I didn't do poetry first.
Right.
Wow.
Mhm.
Cool. So, Saymoukda, can you say more about the journal that there was a lot of discussion about your extremely short poem? What do you have any insight to what those arguments were for and against?
I don't know. My mentor won't tell me. He was one of the guest editors, and he won't tell me because he doesn't. I think he's protecting me in some sense. But we're meeting later. He's coming into town, so I'm like, you got to tell me the tea, because I just, for my own personal thing, like I want to know. I want to know who's talking shit about me. No, I'm playing. But it's just good to know, like, what were their critiques, like what were they concerned about, what were the challenges about this for them, I just want to have a better understanding.
Yeah, I would be really curious about that. And to both of you, what was your first exposure to just for you, Saymoukda, poetry, and Alice, maybe for you, like prose and or poetry? Do you remember what your first exposure was to your form, and what about it hooked you, where you were in your life that it made sense to you?
I think Western nursery rhymes that we had to learn in English as a second language. So we would get taken away, us, former refugee and immigrant kids would get taken away. And I say taken away like we got kidnapped from the schools. We did it. It was still, they ushered us into a different classroom, and we learned American nursery rhymes or Western nursery rhymes to help us like remember English words and English phrases. And so that was my first intro to, I guess, poetry.
Yeah.
And they were fun. They were fun to memorize, and they were fun to say out loud and recite. And I don't even remember any of them, to be honest. Like Jack and Jill, like those ones,
Mm-hmm.
Jack and Jill went up the hill, blah, blah, blah. And then I later learned that they had like more macabre like meanings or history behind them.
Yeah.
And I like that more. I'm like, I want to get into that. I want to learn more about that.
How about you, Alice?
Yeah, I was a very big reader in school as a kid, but also I do a ton of tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that because I'm a giant nerd, which has really enabled me to be like a more confident storyteller of doing this like collaborative storytelling exercise every week. All of a sudden makes me go like, oh hey, mate, like okay, I can tell a story. I know how to tell a story, and I know how to tell a story that people may enjoy even.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. Yeah. Okay. I have a question from our very own Hanya, a broad question for both of you. How does your work develop? Do you have specific workflow, or do you let inspiration guide you through the process?
Alice?
I go through waves. Right now, a little bit of a down wave, so I'm just kind of like sitting and absorbing things and taking in more inspiration. But when I'm in an upswing of work, I try to maintain like a very consistent, like if I've got a big project I'm working on, trying to do like 2,000 to 4,000 words a day to get that. Yeah, I like to when the spirit is with me, I like to take advantage of it and really go for it. Poetry feels a lot more of like what's hitting me when looking for like inspiration. What are the stars telling me? What is my muse singing about? What fresh bill out of Texas is pissing me the fuck off right now? Like,
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Do you have a muse right now? Do you have a muse?
For writing, I think it's a lot of or for writing fiction, I think it's a lot of self-exploration through analogy. Because for a long time I was writing poetry and it was very much just like about me, like here's this poem about me, or about the trauma I've experienced, or about reclaiming space as a queer individual. And so doing fiction right now, it's a ton of exploration of myself through the analogy of a character, of like, I don't have to be writing something that's one-to-one to my lived experiences, but I get to write about a character who interacts with the world in similar ways that I do, to better explore myself. Yeah.
Wow, right.
Yeah. For me, I think ideas come from anywhere and anyone, to be honest. For instance, my Kung Fu Zombie play, I wrote it because I had a whole bunch of nightmares, but they were actually fun. And I kept a dream journal, and then eventually wrote one little scene. And then that scene became a full-length play. One day I was having dinner with some friends and I was singing the song Pocahontas, from Pocahontas, just around the river bend, but I was twisting it a little bit to talk about like how refugee families were escaping the war by going down the Mekong River, and just kind of like ad-libbing and just like improvising. And then my friend was like, oh, you should write a musical. And I was like, what would it be about? And they were like, refugees. I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And then I committed to thinking about it more, and then asked for some funding and got some money. And so now I guess I'm writing a musical about it.
Isn't that the way it goes? I guess.
That's how it goes. Sometimes the magic is from within. Sometimes other people recognize what the magic can be. And so they tell you. You just gotta listen.
Oh.
Right? Yeah.
I love the way you put that. Yeah, I don't think there don't seem to be any more questions. I just have to thank you both again for such a great night, and I hope this isn't too forward, but I heart you both so much. This was fantastic, and I just love our Norris Suburban Center for the Arts, and I'm thrilled that you both kicked the reading series off for us tonight. Thanks, you guys.
You're welcome.
Thanks, y'all.
Can't wait to visit when it's all ready for guests.
Please do.
Yeah, I'll bring a bottle of wine.
Yes, thank you.
I'm like, wait, y'all drink, right? Like, I don't want to bring what if it's a dry campus? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, you could err on the side of bringing a bottle. We'll figure it out from there.
Okay.
So.
All
Thank
right.
you both so much. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye, folks.
Bye.